Well, good evening, this is Hound Dog Steve, wishing you a very pleasant evening. And I thought I'd give you a little bit of an update on the situation that is basically running around the world right now, and we all know what that is. I shall refer to it as CV from here on in, although I don't think I can really avoid mentioning a few things here because, well, there are so many dots to connect. It's very interesting, and I'm sure this video is going to get demonetized. And here is a quick view of the video that I'm going to link below here, which basically connects a whole bunch of dots between the Chinese couple that was sending viruses over from the National Medical Lab in Winnipeg in Canada to the Wuhan CDC, Center for Disease Control. And these viruses just happen to be SARS, Corona, AIDS, Ebola, and the HN series of viruses. And so a couple of things here. Firstly, I came across an article in the Bangladesh online news network, which is kind of interesting in and of itself, but they picked up a story about a little app in China called Ask Doctor. And anyway, I'm just going to play you that little piece right now, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about that. This is, believe it or not, from Bangladesh first internet newspaper, bdnews24.com. Who knew? Worried Chinese turn to online doctor consultations amid coronavirus outbreak. Spooked by a sneeze or a cough, Chinese consumers are turning to online consultations in droves for advice about possible coronavirus symptoms, a boon for fledgling industry that has struggled to win over customers. The surge of inquiries has also been driven by healthcare platforms offering some services for free amid the epidemic. JD Health, an arm of JD.com Inc., has seen its daily volume of respiratory-related online consultations jump 9 times, while mental health consultations have grown 5 to 7 times, according to Zai Jianbo, the company's general manager of online healthcare. Such is a state of fretfulness that always thinking I've been infected by the virus has become a trending topic, with more than 570 million views on Weibo, China's Twitter-like microblogging platform. Lin said he worked around 12 hours per day from the end of January to mid-February, but in a positive sign that panic about the epidemic is receding. He is now working 8 hours a day. Beidou Inc. said its online doctor consultation platform at Wenisheng, which translates to Ask Doctor, has been handling around 850,000 free inquiries daily. Of those, 400,000 were respiratory related, about 50 times the level seen a year earlier. So, even if you assume that half of that 400,000 are just regular cough, colds and flus, that puts you around about 200,000 cases per day. And that puts it in line with the head of the Hong Kong's University head of pathology department, who in my previous video, which will be linked below, predicted there should be about 150,000 cases per day by the middle of February. So I know this is not accurate. I'm not claiming this is a scientific, but why would you phone and ask for symptoms if you weren't thinking that you had those symptoms? So I think this gives us a bit of an idea of what may be really going on within China. So I'm not trying to say that these numbers are an accurate representation, but as a gauge, because as I said, I don't think that you would call up an Ask Doctor app unless you actually felt you were having symptoms. And of course there are an awful lot of people in quarantine in China. And Stephen Mosher made an interesting connection in the interview with Stefan Molyneux, that he thought that the reason that men were dying in higher numbers in China than women is because smoking is a cure for cancer in China. Every man just about smokes in China, and of course you have a huge amount of pollution that people are breathing in on a daily basis, and so the lungs are already compromised by all of that, and then you add on a heavy flu, boy oh boy. So here is another article that I picked up, because what I'm thinking here is connecting the dots. Okay, here is viruses stolen from Canada, sent to Wuhan. The guy who created the two CRISPR twins is working in China to create a way to prevent AIDS from entering cells, because AIDS has a very interesting mechanism that opens the door to enter the cell, and that was one of the viruses that was shipped out from the National Medical Lab, HIV. And as I said, you'll see in the video that where I show you the article where the Indian scientists had found two HIV proteins on the coronavirus. And so, again, as Stephen Mosher said, they were working on inserting a SARS virus inside a coronavirus. And you put those two proteins on there that allow it to enter into the lungs. And now you have a flu for the first whack at you, and then the viral pneumonia is a second whack, and that is the dangerous part. It's a two-punch virus that they've created here. Okay, so here's a story from the Telegraph. Chinese scientist claims to have created world's first genetically edited babies. And I think you may have heard of this. It was fairly big news at the time, and they used the CRISPR, which is a gene editing tool. A Chinese researcher claims he helped make the world's first genetically edited babies, twin girls, whose DNA said he altered with a powerful new tool capable of rewriting a very blueprint of life. If true, it would be a profound leap of science and ethics. A US scientist said he took part in the work in China, but this kind of gene editing is banned in the United States because the DNA changes can pass to future generations and it risks harming other genes. Many mainstream scientists think it is too unsafe to try, and some denounce the Chinese report as human experimentation. So you got to go through this whole story, and down here, right at the very bottom, the US scientist who worked with him on this project after he returned to China was physics and bioengineering professor Michael Dean, who was his advisor at Rice in Houston. Dean also holds what he calls a small stake in, and is on the scientific advisory boards of, his two companies. Fancy that! The Chinese researcher said he practiced editing mice, monkey and human embryos in the lab for several years and has applied for patents on his methods. He said he chose to try embryo gene editing for HIV because these infections are a big problem in China. He sought to disable a gene called CCR5 that forms a protein doorway that allows HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, to enter the cell. Well, by golly, isn't that interesting? Now, if you put all those three together, you've got a SARS virus within a coronavirus, so SARS attacks the respiratory system, and now you add on those two little HIV proteins that provide the doorway that allows the cell to accept the virus. Isn't that interesting? Is the CRISPR baby controversy the start of a terrifying new chapter in gene editing? A Chinese government investigation found He Jiankui violated state law in pursuit of personal fame and fortune. And here he is, He Jiankui, a Chinese researcher at the Human Genome Editing Conference in Hong Kong on Wednesday, November 28, 2018. He claims to have made the world's first gene-edited babies. And as you can see, again, by the article about selling some of these lab animals back to the wet market. And this from Breitbart. Expert Chinese scientists sell lab animals as meat on the black market. Population Research Institute President Stephen W. Mosher wrote at the New York Post on Saturday that China's coronavirus epidemic could have been unleashed by researchers who sold laboratory animals to the notorious wet markets of Wuhan for extra cash. It's escaped the lab, and that, I believe, is what is going on. I know there are some naysayers, but I have a funny feeling that that is what has taken place. There has been several releases of SARS. I think there was 3 escapes of SARS from the Wuhan CDC back in 2004, 2005, somewhere around there. So accidents do happen. And if you're selling animals back into the market who've been infected, and this may be, you know, like a lower down staff member who's disposing of the animals. You know, we're done with them, get rid of them, and he sells them out the back door, makes a couple of bucks for himself, and there you go. It's escaped into the public. And so that's why I'm quite concerned about the effects of this virus. I think this is why we've seen such a massive response by the Chinese. I know they're being praised for their draconian measures of quarantine, but, you know, they didn't do this for SARS. Okay, they let it just peter out. And that's exactly what happened. We went to SARS, and come summertime, once the weather warmed up and dried out, and so on and so forth, basically so did SARS, and we really haven't seen that many cases of SARS ever since. So who knows where this virus is going, but I would certainly take a little bit of time to prepare and to stock up on a few things for a couple of weeks, because I can see that's the other thing that we're witnessing here, and is this knee-jerk response. You know, I can imagine a situation, and I have heard a story that there are 7 people in my village who are in China right now. They're supposed to be returning in 2 weeks, and if one of those people tests positive, they will be locking down the village. And there you go. We'll be stuck. Those supermarkets will be empty in a very short period of time, and 2 weeks, 3 weeks is an awful long time to spend at home. Okay, well, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe below. And if you want, you can go over to my Bitchute channel. I've been uploading all of my videos for the last little while to that channel as well, because I am just getting so tired of YouTube demonetizing. Or because it's not just demonetizing. When they demonetize you, you go into like a little pocket, and all of a sudden nobody is looking at your video. And I am pretty certain that they are going to demonetize this video or take it down completely, because, well, you saw what happens. You know, they put this sign off to send you to the WHO to find out more information from the official people. But, you know, they're saying absolutely nothing. They're not connecting any of these dots. Now, of course, I will say right here, this could all be a figment of my imagination. This is just my opinion, okay? But there are so many coincidences have had to have happened for this to take place. And I'm not saying that it's any way deliberate. I'm saying this has been an accidental, but they were messing around with the Franken virus, and now it has gotten loose. And that's why it's so virulent, and who knows, again, as Stephen Mosher said, because we're looking at an RNA-based virus, these viruses mutate more readily. And so the more it gets passed around, the greater the chance of another mutation coming up. But this is not a natural virus. This is not a virus that you would find in nature. Anyway, in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we'll talk very, very shortly. You take care now. See ya. Bye.